It's being called a day of action from Ottawa to Toronto, London, Hamilton, and in Cobourg, where we find ourselves tonight. There was a protest here just wrapped up momentarily, but dozens flooded this parking lot in Tim Hortons in support of Tim Hortons employees. They're also calling on the corporation to get involved after staffing policies were made by franchises following the province's minimum wage hike from January 1st. And it's this Tim Hortons here in Cobourg on Division Street that rang the alarm. The franchise here drew criticism after it was reported that staff would get no more paid breaks and cuts were being made to employee benefits. But this isn't the only Tim's that has come under fire.
I know that it's not occurring at every franchise for every Tim Hortons, but these particular franchise owners have rolled back the working conditions of the workers inside in retaliation of what could be and should be celebrated as a $2.40 increase for workers in the province of Ontario. These workers are at the lowest rung of the income scale in the province of Ontario.
I'm here to stand shoulder to shoulder with workers and with activists to say this has been a long time coming. It's unfortunate that folks like the franchisees at this particular location have decided that they are going to do everything they can to ensure that the folks here don't get the full benefit. The bottom line is the minimum wages in this province should have been going up for years now. They should have been going up year after year after year at a much higher rate than they have been. And so we're left now with the situation that we're in, where there's a great backlash.
Tim Hortons Corporations is basically saying, look, we're independent of these franchisees.
They actually control the wages. They actually control the price of a cup of coffee. They could say to Tim Hortons franchises all over this province, you can raise the price of a coffee by a couple of cents to be able to pay workers a decent wage. And they won't do that. Instead, what they're trying to make it out to be, oh, just go and blame all the franchises. No, the corporation has got something to responsibility.
And we did make calls to this Tim Hortons here in Cobourg. We did receive some busy signals, but we were later told by an employee that no comment would be provided to media. We also reached out to Tim Hortons Corporation. We were told the only comment or statement that would be provided was the statements that were given out on January 2nd and 5th. The latter statement, part of that read, these recent actions by a few restaurant owners and the unauthorized statements made to the media by a rogue group claiming to speak on behalf of Tim Hortons do not reflect the values of our brand, the views of our company, or the views of the overwhelming majority of our dedicated and hard-working restaurant owners.
Also coming up at 11 on City News, big government, big Labour support for Tim Hortons protesters tonight. Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath joining Labour leaders on the front lines of a demonstration at a Tim Hortons in Cobourg. They're demanding the company crack down on franchisees who are cutting paid breaks and scaling back benefits to compensate for the increased minimum wage. Coming up, what Tim Hortons owners have to say about what some of their franchisees are doing.
A call to action floods the parking lot at the Tim Hortons in Cobourg. I'm Faiza Amin ahead what this protest is hoping to accomplish and why the heat is being put on the corporation. It's being called a day of action from Toronto to Ottawa, London, Hamilton, and in Cobourg, where we find ourselves tonight. I'm Faiza Amin, where a protest in support of Tim Hortons employees is calling on the corporation to get involved after some franchises were accused of making policy changes following Ontario's minimum wage hike.
We fought really hard for these laws. So, you know, it's only been a week and we're already struggling.
The rally held at the steps of the Tim Hortons that caused an uproar last week when it was reported the owners, heirs to the Tim Hortons fortune, were cutting paid breaks and employee benefits in light of the $14 minimum wage that came into effect January 1st.
What do we want? Fair wages. When do we want it? Now.
This was one of many rallies across the province. An earlier rally at this Tim's at Keele and Wilson was also attended by advocates and members of several different labour unions.
These particular franchise owners have rolled back the working conditions of the workers inside in retaliation of what could be and should be celebrated as a $2.40 increase for workers in the province of Ontario.
This isn't the only chain under fire since the wage hike was implemented in January. In fact, several others have also been called out for similar policy changes enforced as a direct result of the increase. It struck a chord with Queen's Park. Last week, Premier Kathleen Wynne called Tim Hortons bullies, and today, NDP leader Andrea Horwath was also in attendance in Cobourg.
The bottom line is the minimum wages in this province should have been going up for years now. They should have been going up year after year after year at a much higher rate than they have been. And so we're left now with the situation that we're in, where there's a great backlash.
The Tim Hortons Corporation issued a response last week stating these restaurants were independently owned and operated, that these recent actions were made by a few franchisees and don't reflect the values of the Tim's brand or that of the majority of their restaurant owners. Tim Hortons Corporation declined to provide an additional comment today, though some advocates say the corporation still has a role to play.
They actually control the price of a cup of coffee. They could say to Tim Hortons franchises all over this province, you can raise the price of a coffee by a couple of cents to be able to pay workers a decent wage.
Now, we did make calls to this Tim Hortons here. We were told no comment would be provided in Cobourg. I'm Faiza Amin for City News.